So, welcome to another exciting episode of Extraordinary Ordinary Women. And I'm Margarita, and I'm excited to be able to share with you stories of ordinary women, women in our community, perhaps even your next door neighbour, women who have had a dream or a vision or an idea and followed it through to fruition. Their stories will encourage you, uplift you, and hopefully inspire you to ignite the seeds of greatness in your heart. For it's through sharing that we come to realise that we are not Robinson Crusoe all alone on our own little island, but that there is, particularly now with social media, this network of truly amazing women who willingly stretch out their hand with encouragement. Having found this for myself when my life was turned upside down, it is my gift to those women to be able to pay forward the gift of encouragement to others. And today on Extraordinary Ordinary Women, I have the privilege of speaking with an incredibly courageous woman, Melanie Oldham. Originally from France, Melanie came to Australia as a young backpacker, embracing, as they do, adventure, hard work, and life on rural properties. But in a moment, that changed. In 2017, a severe work injury fractured more than just her spine. It left her facing chronic pain, post-traumatic syndrome disorder, opioid dependence, and moments of darkness that stripped away the version of herself she once knew. Yet Melanie's story did not end there. Through what I would call pure grit, determination, resilience, rehabilitation, and extraordinary inner strength, she has rebuilt her life in ways that continue to inspire those around her. You will find her journey is one of courage, perseverance, identity, healing, and hope. And today we'll hear about the woman behind the recovery, the mindset that carried her through, and what life has taught her through the hardest chapters. So, without further ado, welcome, Melanie, to Extraordinary Ordinary Women.
Thank you so much for having me today. I do really appreciate you giving me a voice. We have been on that journey, one another, for quite some times now. We've studied together, and we've been able to reach some deep level of meaning into our each other's story. And I really want to thank you for actually holding that sacred space for us.
Oh, it's an honour to do so. Melanie, before we dive into this, whereabouts are you calling in from today or joining us from today?
So I do live in Perth on the Western Australian coast. And I've been in Western Australia for 13 years almost now. And originally I am from France. But I was intending to travel all around the world for quite some time. And I straight away fell in love with this country and specifically this region. And there I am.
So, Melanie, you've lived through experiences that would have stopped many people in their tracks. Before we dive into your incredible journey, take us back to that young French girl first arriving in Australia.
So first of all, I was working in hospitality for some times. I've always been hoping to kind of have a career, as per se, in hospitality. And my only thing is I was terrible with English at school. And I couldn't actually do a sentence properly. It was, quite terrible. And I was like, nothing better than actually going to a country to learn the language. And within 6 months, I went really into what they call the deep bush in Australia, and met so many different people from so many different backgrounds with different upbringing that made me realize not only my childhood was very beautiful and kind of carefree. You know, I had that realization that it wasn't for everyone the case, and made me realize how grateful I was that my childhood was like, as I say, a bit like the golden child, and made me see life in a different way from the get-go. So I went from working to a Michelin star restaurant to working in a shearing shed, you know, with like shears. So as you
Yes.
see, very
I've
interesting,
It's a
very
very
interesting characters. Yeah, they do. They did welcome me as their little sister or their little daughter, and yeah, I just fell in love with the lifestyle. Just walking barefoot, like very cliche, but walking barefoot, waking up early, and just chilling and enjoying everyday life by the end of the day. And so it really helped me being more present in the moment rather than, oh, I just bought that designer bag and I'm just going on the French Riviera for a holiday and I am that somebody. Like, I found value in myself without all these luxury assets, if that makes sense.
So being in the bush, the outback, really helped you see yourself.
Yeah, well, it was a deeper layer of understanding who I was at the core. And naively, I thought I arrived. You know, like naively, I was like, okay, oh, this is it. That's it. I found myself. This is my identity. This is my country. This is home. This is my new self. And the thing, when we learn on that journey of self-discovery and spiritual journey, self-improvement journey, there's not really a destination. So it's layers after layers and ordeals or challenges that comes your way, and then you grow from that. But yeah, 6 months in, I was like, that's it.
Back then, you were young in your early 20s, and yes, you've said it all. So, and then life took an unexpected turn.
Yes. So after, I'd say I was there for six years probably, when I was working on farms and grain sites, you know, like storage, and it was during the harvest season, so long hours, busy. And there's something that happened, which there's no point going much into detail, but there's something that was supposed to be closed and that was left open. And certain circumstances have occurred, and I ended up falling backwards into what you call like a manhole, and like a metallic structure that was left open into a very tiny hole. And it's like a funnel, a concrete funnel, I call it, like a grain pit, you know, that I fell into. And that's where the journey started of that turn that I took, yeah.
So it wasn't a simple accident. I've seen pictures of you all strapped up. You fractured your spine. You did a whole lot of damage.
Yeah, so at the start, they didn't really realize because of the inflammation, and obviously the body was in shock. Because I've heard 3 meters, I've heard 4 meters, doesn't really matter how high the distance was. But the whiplash was important because I actually hit the back of my head onto the grid, and which caused like to cut the back of my head. I obviously lost consciousness, and everything until 2 days after the hospital is pretty much a blur. I have a few like scenarios that I do remember. But yeah, it was a brand new journey for me in terms of I've never really been to hospital in my life. I've never had like a major incident. I've been flying with the flying doctors back to the Perth hospital because I was living in the country. So that tells you it's kind of serious, you know. They always told me that we knew it was serious because it was the flying doctor, but it wasn't that serious because it wasn't the helicopter. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
But see, like my life wasn't at risk. I wasn't gonna die, but it was
Severe
the
injuries.
matter of like what level the injuries I
Yeah.
extended.
So what level of injuries, and what was happening life in the hospital? Talk to us about that, because that was pretty horrendous, horrific.
Yeah, well, same. It's something completely new. First 2 days, it's such a blur. I remember this lady. Her name was actually Yvonne or Shivon, and every hour, because you're in the ward where they check your vitals, so you try to getting some rest because you're exhausted, and every hour someone like moves you. I was like, hi, what's my name? And how many fingers? And, like checking the vitals and all of that. And everyone coming obviously to the bed and reading things, they were actually saying how lucky I was, saying like, you've got a guardian angel. They told my husband, I just started dating at the time, that I had a massive lucky star, and that it could have been and should have been so much worse. So one thing that I do remember really clearly is someone in a clumsy way asked me to move my legs, and they just scribbled on the board and walked away. And I just wanted to say, so are they moving? Like, because I was trying to move them, and it just nothing in his face. I was like, oh my God, what if my legs are actually not moving? And that's when I realized the potential gravity of the consequences that this fall could have, in the whole things, there's always, good and fun stories to remember. And I always like when I mention this story to people to say that I was next to a lady and they had pulled a curtain, and I was next to that lady who was saying that she got like, she's super loud, and so that she backstabbed me and blah blah blah. And I'm like, like people sometimes you can't really trust them. They will backstab you. Say you don't get it. And she pulled that dress they give you, that gown they give you at the hospital, and she has like a massive stab wound in her back. And she's telling me how she's going to get us bottles of Jack Daniels so we can party during. So it was some fun times within the process. I ended up being able to negotiate to be at the hotel next door. The hotel room, there's an hotel that was next door to the hospital, and they said, look, we cannot send you back home yet, but if you want, go to hospital. If anything comes up, you can actually just come here. But it was it went really quick, but it felt like a bit of an eternity as well, if that makes sense,
So you were bedridden for quite some time, and could you at that point move your arms and legs?
So I could move my arms and legs. They were thinking like maybe complication could have occurred, like in terms of, from the waist down. I've done a lot of MRIs and scans, and they were confident that the spinal cord was in section, but the way the fractures were, they were saying that the scar tissue had to fill in the gaps first to make sure it was going to heal properly. And after a few times, like going back on my legs was very, I don't like to use the word traumatic, because it was a part of the journey, but I felt like my legs wouldn't carry me. So I would have like people trying to, make me one step at a time. And so it's all these little things that, because it's been a while now, I kind of understand it was just what it was meant to happen. But when you ask this question and I talk about it, and I was like, yeah, it was pretty out there. Like it's not something that just happens every second day. Yeah.
So that's interesting, and we'll come back to that point that it was meant to happen. People often see the strength and recovery, but not always the private battles that go behind it in our head. What were some of the hardest realities you had to navigate during that particular chapter of your life?
I would say, quite frankly, the physical part was hard to hear and was quite things that I had to deal with in the everyday life. For example, I heard things saying, look, for now it's okay, but your nervous system is so flared up and the way your body is reacting, this, you probably will end up crippled with arthritis by the age of 30 and have to be in a wheelchair. So it was that type of, okay, right now I'm not in a wheelchair, that's out of the, but actually it's not completely gone. And that started to play on my mind. I was like, okay, what do I do if I'm in a wheelchair? You know, it happens to people every day. So I'm gonna have to understand, relearn how to live. And so that started to just have a bit of a toll on me. And the meds, I did not do well with the meds. And because of the pain, and which was nervous pain and chronic, and they were giving me bigger dosage, and they were, and after a while, you were talking about identity. I just lost track of that, who I was, what I was meant to be, who I wanted to be. And it became that big blur, that really foggy picture in my mind, where I was just, what now? And yeah, that was the start of, to me, the worst part. Because people are like, oh, awesome, you don't have your neck brace anymore, you are not paralyzed yet, you can, you know, start to walk normal again. I had fears of driving, I couldn't park in underground parking, like I had all these things that slowly kind of became everyday life, and I dealt with it. But then there's the medical and the medicine part. When I took these meds, that really actually started to bringing me down even more. So yes, it was quite interesting. Also the fact that when you have a neck brace and when you have all these things, and you know, like, or even the wheelchair, because I had the wheelchair for a little bit, people do see you and they, oh, sorry, oh, okay, are you right? Because, you know, like I had to have that 24/7, and thanks to my husband, like he was helping me shower. I don't know how deep we want to go today, but it's those little things that you actually take for granted that actually become really challenging for your everyday life. But as soon as the neck brace came off, people did not see the trauma in me. And I really, you know, the Invisible Wounds project, like this is something I really want to put out there, is every single person you're going to see from a distance or close, or everyone has gone through a tough time, everyone is going through a tough time. People might be in pain emotionally, physically, people might be battling some kind of illness. And in that very loud, noisy, everyday world, I've really noticed that. I had a neck brace, people smile, very caring, lots of compassion. And when that left, at the shops, you know, they grab something and they push, and you're just like, whoa, 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 like it's here, like I'm still at risk. So yeah, that was a bit of something that I noticed as well. Yeah.
It is interesting that, because if neck brace, broken arm in a plaster, people see it, they can acknowledge it, but when it's inside, it's not seen. So you do mention those tough times. What did you do mentally to get you through? Because you actually do have to take action to move through that? It doesn't happen by magic, does it?
No, and it's also, it can be really quick when we decide to address and acknowledge that there's room for improvement and there's something that can occur that's going to ease the path. But it's also difficult to, I feel like, I want to say, like, I was trying to fight for something, for an outcome I was not guaranteed.
Yes.
And that can be very discouraging at times, because I don't know, maybe it was a bit my ego, like I'm just going to prove them wrong, you know. But there was that fire in some ways, that I was just, no way. If I have a choice, if I have chances that are given to me, that I can try not to be in a wheelchair, not to have my mobility restricted and be constantly in pain the way I was at the time, I'm just going to try anything I can. So obviously I don't know, like I had a morphine patch that they kept like gradually increasing, because the threshold of the pain, you know, was getting actually used to the dosage, because it was chronic. Yeah. And some opioids, sleeping pills, and antidepressant, because I was like, what's going on? So they just loaded me. I was like, it's not gonna fix me, that, guys. Like, if anything, it's making it worse. But they didn't really have any answers, so there's like, just take these. And I started to read about Joe Dispenza. That was my first, I think, attempt to just rewire the brain and understanding that energy. I've read things like people that have multiple sclerosis, or that were like in a wheelchair doing some exercises, neurological rewiring, and they left the place walking. And I was like, hold on a minute. What's going on? What is that kind of like sorcery, or is it, you know? But I knew, yeah, I don't know. I felt called to actually study his work. And I did some NLP. I did obviously EMDR. If it existed, I've tried. You know, I've even tried something. There's only 2 in Australia. It's called the Nerve Scrambler, and it's in a suburb in the city called Subiaco. And they were doing like electrodes and trying to shock the nervous system, but to help rewiring it. Wow. I had the pain specialist I was going to see for over a year probably. He wanted to actually put like a shoelace along my spine, and he said it's acting like a peacemaker, and it will tell your nervous system when to fire, when to be in the parasympathetic system. And I was just like, I don't want to have a foreign object hooked to my spinal cord telling my body what to do, you know. So I tried to regulate my parasympathetic system, and all the nervous system. It was exhausted, but it was also like very, what's the word? I think it's coming in French. Almost irritated, you know. Everything, I was jumping, everything would be scary, everything would be, so I knew that was where I needed to start, regulating my nervous system, telling it that it was safe, telling it that I was healed, telling it, and slowly talking to the pain. I'm like, why are you causing me pain if I'm healed? And sometimes our body calls the pain as protection, you know. If we cause you pain, you won't go to do this. And if you do not do this, then you have greater chance to not be at risk. So our brain is here to keep us safe, you know. So yeah, that was the first few steps that I took. It was to address the nervous system healing while taking meds. So it was a bit paradoxical.
So, and I just love Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He was somebody I turned to in my time too. So so Dr. Joe Dispenza, and you did tell me that you went off meds. You decided that that was a decision and a choice you had to make. Just tell us briefly about what happened during that period of time, because I think
Yes.
that's really important, because you with your accident, me with my cancer, we are guided by doctors to the point when we suddenly realize, actually, I have to take charge. My body can heal itself. So please tell us about that little part of your journey.
Yes. So it had to go through, because of law. I'm gonna try to stay a little bit evasive, but because of certain laws and because of the procedure that I was going through, I had to show that I was taking the treatment. So that's what I did. I was taking treatment. When
Right.
everything when everything kind of like settled and everything was in my hand, I decided that I was going to stop the meds. So I did something, disclaimer, I did something not very smart. I was in such a second state of mind and not very myself that I felt some type of resentment and even like hate towards the meds, because they were burning my brain cells, and they were making me someone, and I would overreact, and I wouldn't be me anymore. And I hated who I became. So I kind of like had all the boxes of meds on my bed, I remember. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to take any more of that. I ripped the patch and I left everything there. And I was like, that's it. And a part of me wanted to put them in the bin. And another part of me was like, no, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it with them, like within your side. So you're stronger than that.
Wow. Mm.
The issue was I had been on them for so long. It just sent me to oblivion in terms of like the withdrawals. And I wrote like a poem about it. The withdrawals were just from another world. I remember, I think it was the first night, I had like cold sweat on my bathroom floor, and I was with my hair dryer trying to warm myself because I was cold to the bone, like so cold. And I can't really explain really the feeling unless someone has had these experiences before, because I've talked to people that actually did experience that with different legal and illegal substances. And it's really the fact that you can describe it so well if you haven't lived it. It's really interesting, you know, to comprehend really the subtle feeling of everything that's going on all at once. So, but I did it. I think it took me 3 days. I was really the shadow of myself. And then on the 4th day, I was on my couch all day. 5th day, and I had to go back to work. I think it was after 5 or 6 days, I went to work. And it's like all the serotonin in my body had been sucked out anymore, because, you know, the morphine and this, like it kept me happy, like all the antidepressant. And I arrive at work and I just bawled my eyes out, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'm remembering driving with a specific like song on and birds noise, and I was just like, what is that? You know, what is even the point of doing these things called life? Yeah. And so to me, it was really interesting, because I thought the end was, okay, I had the accident and I'm going to recover. And it got worse with the meds. And I stopped the meds and it got worse. And I'm like, where is this ending? Yeah. It's never going to get okay. I'm every decision I make, I'm making it harder for myself. So maybe the doctors were right. No, I've never said that. Do you know what I mean? I was like, what am I
Yes.
supposed to learn? What is the message that I'm supposed to get there? So we have done a lot of Reiki, lots of acupuncture, lots of alternative medicines that I thought could be beneficial to help my body like feel more at peace and at ease, and regulating all my hormones. And it's really also give it time, because I found people would do something for like a month, 2 months, and then kind of get sidetracked, go back to the old self, and that doesn't work, or this. Our body needs time to regulate. Our body needs, I always, I hear when you do something, the universe is a mirror, but there's always a bit of a lag. So if you smile, there's going to be a lag before you see the reflection smiling. So it's whatever you do, if you don't see that there's any result yet, just keep going. There's just a little bit of a lag between your actions and when the universe is actually reflecting
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's remarkable, because anybody who is, not that I've had anything to do with drugs as such, but I have listened to other people's stories, with children on drugs, et cetera, and know the process and what they go through just coming off 1 or 2 drugs, let alone the number that you were on. So my last question here is, and it ties back to something you mentioned about, I've forgotten your exact words, but it was destined to happen. It needed to happen. Right. So looking back now, what are the unexpected insights, the strengths or perspectives that have emerged from such a difficult chapter of your life? Why would you say that it was destined to happen? What's been the benefits? Yeah.
I met you.
Oh,
One of the, do you know what? I've thought of so many, and this is the one I've heard the loudest in my mind. I was like, you know what, I'm going to say it. One of them, but
well,
there's
thank you. Can I just say thank you? But I had an amazing journey. We've done a coaching course together, and whilst we haven't physically met, you have just inspired me through my cancer journey, and I just feel like we are spiritual sisters. It's beautiful. So tick that box.
Thank you. Thanks. There's so many. There's so much, and forgiveness is probably a big one.
Yeah.
It happened in 2017, so it's going to be almost 10 years. Well, 9.5 years. So when it happened, it wasn't my fault. That thing has been left open. That the circumstances were not, fair in some ways. And so I did not understand why some people try to cover the truth in some ways. And I was the victim of the fall. And I also felt that I was the victim of the system, without getting into too many details. And so that was hard. I was like, I'm the one that's been told I might never walk again. I'm the one that's been really going through, like, lost my job, that fractured. There's a before and after that accident in my life, So processing this, not getting the support, not getting the validation, even if I'm not a big, external validation doesn't really mean much to me, but in terms of acknowledgement, I should say, actually acknowledging that this is what's happened, I learned so much. I've grown a lot in terms of how to deal with situation, and I've explored many dark places in my psyche. It opened that gate of, I've always been a very happy person. I've always been very bubbly. I've always been, like, life is great. And even heartbreaks happen, this happen and that, but life in general is amazing. this plunged me in some corners of my mind where I was actually foreign to. I was like, oh, this is a part of me. Okay, wow, this is also a part of me. All right. If that accident didn't happen, I would have not known myself as much as I know myself now, because like on the video game, when you just explore certain map and you're like, I'm not going to go to this map and not going to go to that map. And then as you advance in the game, they kind of force you to go to visit that guy, and they force you to go to see these places. So I think I do know myself better. And I do have this idea of giving people the right to share their story as well, because I think everyone should actually share their story if they are ready. As we never know who do we inspire. We never know, as I said before, like your journey, the way you deciding to actually live, and you have, like some people do quit, some people, and just that, when I talk to people, this, and I know, like sometimes I see them again, like 3-4 months later. I'm thinking of your friend often, like you mentioned, like she's battling cancer, but she's on that farm on her own, and she's still, soldiering on and decide to actually choose life. That's beautiful. And I'm like, yeah. And that person took to that person, and as a collective, we're coming together stronger when we are vulnerable enough to share.
Yeah.
With that falling into, obviously, which sometimes, the triangle, like the victim, or we can be like persecuted, or it's a fine line, but I think it's a beautiful, it's a beautiful journey in all its sense. Yeah.
Totally agree with all of that you've said. It is incredible. So, Melanie, thank you for trusting us with such a deeply personal and, dare I say, fragile chapter of your life. Your story reminds us, and you've just mentioned this, that extraordinary strength is often found in ordinary people facing unimaginable circumstances. Thank you for sharing your heart and your journey with us today, Melanie.
Thank you.
And folk, I look forward to sharing the story of another extraordinary, ordinary woman with you all. Thank you for joining us. And if you enjoy hearing the stories of ordinary women doing extraordinary things, I invite you to subscribe and join us for future conversations. So let's try and reach 90 subscribers this month as we continue sharing these uplifting stories. With heart, Margarita.
Thank you.